Arirang Special.
I felt a duty to sacrifice myself and achieve something good for our people.
Ahn Jung-geunについては犯罪者である。
安重根是历史上著名的抗日义士，在中国也受到尊重。
우리나라의 독립과 동양 평화를 위해 목숨을 바치신 분입니다.
I have done it with my death already in mind, so I have no regrets. When I hear the words of my country's independence, I will be singing and dancing in heaven.
The great Chinese continent. The early 20th century, Harbin was the site of severe power struggle. It was the starting point of the Chinese Eastern Railway, which linked Manchuria's east and west, and a shortcut for the world's longest railroad, the Trans-Siberian Railway. There was an unexpected event that had taken place. Platform 1 at the Harbin Railway Station. There are two patterns laid on the ground. They mark a great historic event. October 26, 1909. It was 4 years after the end of the Russo-Japanese War. At 9:25 a.m., a train arrived at Harbin Railway Station, Platform 1. Russian honor guard and the Japanese police lined up to greet a very important guest. A man in his late 60s got off the train and slowly passed the honor guard and walked toward consuls from each country. And at that moment, a man pulled a trigger aiming at the distinguished figure. 3 bullets hit his chest. The man lying on the ground was Ito Hirobumi. He was the head of the Japanese Privy Council.
Hurrah, Korea!
The man who shot him shouted out, "Hurrah for Korea," as he was arrested without any resistance. There were still bullets left in the gun. The man was named Ahn Jung-geun, and he was a Korean. Ito Hirobumi immediately died, and his death became a controversy around the world. Imperialist powers had various views of the incident. In many of the cases, like the Japanese media, people mourned for the death of Ito, who headed modernization of Japan in the hands of a terrorist from Korea.
어, 10월 26일 날 이후로 10일 동안 약 9만 통 정도의 정보가 오갔다고 알려져 있습니다. 이토를 살해한 행위 자체가 잘못된 것이다. 뭐 이렇게 이제 직접적으로 이야기를 하기도 하고 또 거기에서 이제 어떤 전략적으로 본다면은 그것이 조선에게 전혀 이로울 것이 없다고 하는 이런 이야기까지 이제 진행이 되기도 합니다.
China's reaction was on the contrary. Chinese newspapers and magazines greatly praised Ahn Jung-geun's action on their editorials and columns. Minju Ribao, published in Shanghai, ran 54 articles, editorials, and analysis of the incident for 21 days and demanded for China's awakening.
比如说这个安中根的哈尔滨一举是这个革命党人、革命军所做的这个特殊的战争，它不是简单的暗杀，是100万军队所不及的一个特殊的战争。
The Chinese people highly praised Ahn Jung-geun's act. A novel called Spirit of a Patriot depicting Ahn Jung-geun's shooting, and it was later produced as a movie in China.
안 의사의 거사가 있고 나서 직후부터 중국에서는 이제 그 거사 장면을 연극으로 만들고 공연을 하는 그런 그 상황이 벌어지게 됩니다. 꽤 많은 숫자의 작품들이 지금도 남아 있고요. 신의 혁명의 구체적인 어떤 내용이라든가 이런 것과는 차이가 있겠습니다만은 하나의 자신감이라는 측면에서는 큰 의미가 있다고 할 수가 있습니다.
Sun Yat-sen, the first president of the Republic of China, even wrote a poem in his honor. A death of a prominent figure in Japan, and the assessment of a shooter varied greatly. So why were there so many different voices? Ahn had used FN Browning M1900 pistol at the time. It was the latest semi-automatic pistol model, which showed that the shooting was carefully planned. The bullets that were used had a cross carved in the tip. It is believed that Ahn himself carved in the cross to make the arsenal more lethal. So why was Ahn Jung-geun so intent on killing Ito Hirobumi? Ahn Jung-geun was arrested by the Russian guards at the Harbin Railway Station, but he was handed over to the Japanese Consulate General. Russia was trying to avoid conflict with Japan. A consulate general at the time took the role of the police, as well as handling diplomatic affairs, as there were many incidents due to power struggle among nations. Although Ahn Jung-geun wasn't represented properly, he had been consistent in explaining the reasons for the shooting since his arrest. His argument had placed many people around him in confusion. 4 days after the shooting, October 30th, Mizoguchi was a prosecutor to first interrogate Ahn Jung-geun in Harbin. Why do you view Ito Hirobumi as an enemy?
There are many reasons why I find him an enemy. Assassinating the Korean Empress Myeongseong, dethroning the Emperor Gojong, forcing 14 unequal treaties on Korea, massacring innocent Koreans, plundering Korean railroads, mines, forests, and rivers, disbanding the Korean armed forces, obstructing the education of Korea, confiscating and burning Korean textbooks, spreading a rumor around the world that Koreans wanted Japanese protection, and breaking the peace of Asia.
Ahn Jung-geun listed 15 reasons for his act of revolt while being interrogated by Ms. Oguchi.
I killed Ito Hirobumi for the peace in East Asia. It wasn't just for the Korean people, but also for the Japanese. Please, deliver my words to the Japanese emperor.
Ahn Jung-geun claimed that he had killed Ito for peace in East Asia. Ito Hirobumi thought of himself as the protector of peace in Asia and emphasized Japan's effort to realizing that peace. Disruption of peace in the Far East cannot be of benefit to Japan. Japan must, with all its might and sincerity, preserve peace in the Far East. However, Ahn Jung-geun was claiming differently. His confidence and logical explanation had shaken many thought. So who was telling the truth? Korea was a small nation, but geopolitically important. China coveted this small nation to maintain its power in Asia, and Russia needed to secure a port that didn't freeze. Japan wanted to advance to the continent after succeeding in modernization through the Korean peninsula. As such, many countries desired Korea. The powers clashed in the First Sino-Japanese War and the Russo-Japanese War, which had directly and indirectly involved Korea. Japan was the winner, and Korea felt betrayed and became angry.
일본이 동양 평화를 지키고 또 조선의 독립을 공고하게 하기 위해서 러시아와 전쟁을 한다고 이야기를 했기 때문에 그것을 믿었다. 그리고 거기에 대해서 지지하고 따르는 것이, 도와주는 것이 의로운 일이라고 생각을 했다고 이야기를 하고 있습니다. 그러나 러일전쟁 직후에 일본이 보여준 태도는 그것과 반대로 약속을 지키지 않고 오히려 동양 평화를 파괴하는 데 앞장서고 있다고 생각을 했고요.
In the fall of the year Japan had won the Sino-Japanese War, Japan invaded the king's palace and brutally murdered Empress Myeongsong. It was unprecedented, and Ito was behind this cruel and savage act that could never be witnessed anywhere else in the world. After the Russo-Japanese War, on November 17th, Japan forced the Japan-Korea Treaty of 1905, taking away the Korean Empire's diplomatic rights. Ito threatened Emperor Kojong to sign the treaty. Ito was also responsible for disbanding the Korean army, and there were demonstrations held everywhere to protest Japan's tyranny. But Japan didn't back down. On the contrary, Japan brutally massacred anyone standing in its way, be it ordinary civilians or army raised to fight against Japan. December of that year, Japan established Governor General of Korea to oversee all government administrative works in the country. And Ito Hirobumi was inaugurated the first Resident General of Korea.
これはどこまで日本が中心になって実質上日本が実効支配していくでそのプロセスに韓国の併合ということが出てくるわけです。これは非常に危険な考え方です。で残念ながら日本の大東亜共栄圏の思想これはもうすでに、明治からそして伊藤博文にも共通した考え方です。
Ito Hirobumi's pacifism was formed to help Japan deal with the imperialism from the West. It wasn't for the real peace in Asia, but Japan's form of imperialism.
その 東アジアの平和というのはどこまでも日本が中心になって日本が周辺を属国化していく、そういうことでそのヨーロッパに対抗していくという考え方です。平和を実現するために戦争をするという論理はこれは大変危険です。今でいう聖戦という考え方ですね。
Ahn Jung-geun, who was greatly concerned of the national safety, had no choice but to shoot down Japanese imperialism. Seven days after Ahn Jung-geun was arrested at Harbin, he was sent to the Lushan prison. Lushan was a territory in China, but it was actually under the control of Japan. Russia began construction of the Lushan prison when it exercised greater influence in the region, but Japan came to finish the building. It was an international prison capable of incarcerating 2,000 people. It was also the place of inhumane torturing of its prisoners.
그러니까 여순 감옥에는 주요하게 이제 저 항일 투사, 그리고 한국에서는 이제 그 독립 그 운동가, 그리고 이제 중국에 많은 이제 그 역시 이제 항일 운동하는 사람들. 그리고 안중근 이사님은 이제 1909년도 11월 2일부터 여기 이제 그 수감돼서 114일 동안 여기서 수감되어 있었습니다.
Prison officers were antagonistic against a terrorist who had killed an important Japanese political figure. But Ahn never got intimidated.
할빈에서 일로 그 이송을 할 때 많은 사람들이 이제 일본 그 헌병들이 그 이제 그 이토 히로부미를 이제 총살했으니까 그 안중근 이사님 정오했습니다. 그래서 그 구타를 하려고 막 그래고 뭐 그러는 걸 이제 안중근 이사님이 그랬어요. 항일 투쟁, 그러니까 그 독립운동이 독립 전쟁의 그 저 연장으로 할빈에서 이토 히로부미를 죽이지 개인 목적으로 죽는 게 아니고.
The trial, which attracted much interest from around the world, was held at the higher court in Lushan. Many had gathered to watch the first hearing, held on February 7th, 1910.
안중근の場合には特別なやはり存在であった。影響力がいろんな意味であった。逆に言えばだからこそ形だけ裁判をし、かつその旅人という場で、形式的な手続きを最低限踏んで一応処刑したと。逆に言えばそうせざるを得なかったという状況があったと思います。
The prosecutor Mizoguchi advocated that Ahn Jung-geun was a murderer of vengeance. Were you considering to kill yourself after murdering Prince Ito?
I aim for Korea's independence and peace in Asia. I didn't kill Ito for personal revenge, but for peace. I have not realized my goal, so I wasn't planning to kill myself after Ito's death. I am not a terrorist, but the lieutenant of the Korea's righteous army carrying out a mission. I am not a murderer, but a prisoner of war.
The audience began to know him as a soldier Ahn Jung-geun and not a terrorist, and curiosity grew. Who could he be? Ahn was born in 1879 at Hwanghae-do. His father was an aristocrat, supporter of modernization, and his mother also became an independence activist. Ahn became a Catholic early on, and his family became missionaries at Cheonggi-dong, Hwanghae Province, and educated the people for modernization. Ahn Jung-geun met a French priest named Wilhelm, who christened him, and he had taught Ahn of peace and equality. He was angered by the Japanese attitude after the Russo-Japanese War and moved to Chinampo, Pyeongan-namdo in 1906. He devoted himself to educating Korean people to work for the recovery of national power and started Samhung School. The following year, Emperor Kojong tried to send a special envoy to the Hague Convention of 1907, but was blocked by Japan. Upon the incident, Emperor Kojong was forced to abdicate his throne by Japan.
그 1905년 11월에 소위 보호제약이란 걸 대한제국에 강요를 했죠. 고종이나 그 고종 조정의 그 대신들은 뭐 굉장히 아주 한사코 거부를 했습니다. 조약 문서 형식으로는 그 승인된 게 아니었습니다. 그것을 이제 고종이 국제사회에 알리기 위해서 헤이그의 제2차 만국평화회의가 열릴 때 특사 3사람을 보낸 겁니다.
Japan had deceived the world by lying that Korea had requested Japanese protection and ruthlessly went on to establish grounds for colonization.
이 1900년 현재로도 일본은 그 순수한 그 제국주의 국가라기보다도 만들어진 무사 제국주의, 난 그렇게 보고 있습니다. 그러니까 따라서 이 굉장히 그 침략적인 그 성향이 강하죠. 영국이 가서 인도를 차지해서 그 통치하는 방식, 프랑스가 베트남 통치하는 방식과 전혀 다릅니다.
Ahn Jung-geun found it urgent to recover national power and left to Vladivostok, Russia. He formed an armed Korean resistance group and led several attacks against Japanese forces as lieutenant general.
한 150명의 이 병사들을 이끌고 두만강을 건너서 한경도에 이미 와 있는 일본군을 공격을 했다고 그러죠. 한 5차례 전투를 한 걸로 돼 있습니다.
But it was a losing battle with 150 foot soldiers fighting against Japanese army equipped with the latest weapon. Ahn Jung-geun had to revise his strategy. In early 1909, Ahn Jung-geun cut off the top of his left ring finger with his colleagues and wrote a pledge in blood, saying independence to Korea. They had pledged their lives to fight for the independence of their home country. Ahn had formed a group of people dedicating their lives to fight for Korea's independence called Tanjihae. On October 26th, Ahn launched a new military operation in Harbin. The target was Ito Hirobumi. Ito's visit was to approve Korea annexation plan and purchase railway rights in Manchuria from Russia.
일본이 사자는 겁니다. 이거 일본이 사면요, 완전히 만주가 일본 손에 들어가는 겁니다. 이토 히로부미에 대한 적개심, 민족적인 적개심도 있지만은 만주 통치와 그 향배와 거기에 이어져 있는 연해주에서의 항일 독립군 세력, 한국 독립군 세력의 운명이 걸려 있는 거였습니다. 그래서 대한해군 참모부에서 아주 중요한 사안으로 다룬 겁니다.
Ahn had carried out the mission to protect their base for the independence movement, to prevent Korea annexation, and guard peace in Asia. His will came stronger within the cheering Japanese crowd.
East wind is getting colder, but strong man's heart is burning. Fury has reached to top, and peace in Asia will be realized.
It was 6 meters from where Ito had stood. The trigger was pulled.
Ura Korea! Ura Korea!
And he spoke in a universal language to appeal to the world. Imperialism disguised as peace. He was lying on the ground. Ahn Jung-geun stood proud after carrying out his mission.
그 망국이 다 아는 용어로 썼다 뭐 이렇게도 볼 수 있는데 도망을 가지 않았단 말이죠. 내가 적어도 이자를 죽인 사유는 분명히 밝혀야 되겠다. 이런 생각은 있었던 것 같습니다.
Ahn Jung-geun's battle continued at his trial. He wanted to tell the world the lies Japan was telling and how it dreamed of forming colonies as an imperialist. It was his only chance to show how wrong Japan was when the world was paying attention.
Ahn Jung-geunが伊藤を殺害したということは帝国主義諸国にとってものすごい衝撃ですね。反対する弱小の国が抵抗するということをね、私は欧米の国々に帝国主義のそのいわば先進国がね体験するわけですね。そういう意味では世界的なやっぱりイシューだったと思います。
But the trial only lasted a week. There was a motive behind exceptionally fast, speedy trial. Japan had the judgment already in its mind. It just wanted to show the world that it had gone through the due process and everything was done fairly. The High Court will sentence death when the lower court delivers a sentence of life imprisonment.
Japan政府はどこまでも最初からアン・ジュングンという人間を早く処刑するという方針でおります。したがって彼のその伊藤博文射殺という行為、それがその国際社会に広く知れ渡ったり、あるいは日本の中でもアン・ジュングンの義挙をですね対して同情や関心を持ったりシンパシーを持つ人々が、やっぱり出てくることを非常に恐れておりました。
The trial was like a constructed play, and Ahn Jung-geun protested.
This court is organized of only the Japanese. The judge, lawyer, and translator. Anyone can tell this trial is one-sided. I killed Ito in a war for Korea's independence. And as the Lieutenant General of the Korea's Righteous Army, I did it for my country's independence. So I should be tried under the international law.
군인 신분이기 때문에 나한테는 일본 제국 법은 물론이고 대한제국법도 나는 원하지 않는다. 국제법을 적용하라 이렇게 주장했습니다. 사실은 이 육전 포로에 관한 법 제2조에 보면은 정규 군이 아닌 그 의병 조직도 이 법에 적용을 받는다는 구절까지 있어요.
Unfortunately, he wasn't tried under the international law. His lawyer was a Japanese, and the judge wouldn't allow lawyers from Korea or England for his defense. Ahn's final statement took 2 hours of impassioned speech.
I have shot Ito as a Lieutenant General of the Korea's Righteous Army because he disrupted peace in Asia and hindered Korea's independence. For the last time, I wish to say that I want nothing more than Korea's independence.
On February 14th, 1910, Ahn Jung-geun was given a death sentence.
I knew from the start. Is there anything more severe than the death sentence?
He was laughing. He was fighting alone in the war, and it was nearing an end. Ahn's dignified attitude had surprised the foreign press. On April 1910, a British weekly illustrated newspaper graphic ran articles on the trial of Ahn Jung-geun, and the stories had changed its view as the trial progressed. He had the hero's crown almost within his grasp, and he left the court proudly.
이 재판 아주 세계의 재판인데 이 재판의 결국 승리자는 안중근이고 패배자 파렴치한으로 몰리게 된 것은 죽은 이토다. 이런 식의 어떤 언급을 하게 됩니다. 재판을 보면서 어떤 인식의 변화가 나타났다고 할 수가 있을 것입니다.
It was decided that the sentence will be carried out on March 26th. There was about 40 days left. However, Ahn's duty wasn't completed. Ahn concentrated on writing while he was confined. He wrote an autobiography, History of Ahn Eung-chil, and an essay on peace in East Asia. In the essay, he wrote his thoughts on pan-Asianism.
남아있는 부분을 보면 기본적인 내용은 그렇습니다. 세상은 온통 전쟁 준비, 그 어떤 전쟁을 통해서 인종 간의 경쟁을 하고 있는 세상이다. 따라서 이런 세상에서 벗어나서 평화를 유지를 해야 되는데 평화를 얻기 위해서는 일본의 역할이 중요하다. 그런데 일본이 제 역할을 제대로 못하고 있었다. 당시의 상황까지. 거기까지가 이제 현재 글로 남아있는 부분이고요. 그 이후의 내용에 대해서는 사실은 일본인 법원장과의 면담을 통해서 대략적인 내용을 이야기를 합니다.
Surprisingly, Ahn Jung-geun had very detailed plan to realize peace.
日本は獲得した領土を放棄すると。で世界を驚かせると。そして そこにその平和会を置いて、その三国でそれぞれその軍隊を出してこの東洋の平和をこう守ると。統一した三カ国でみんなね1円ずつ、国民一人がね1円ずつ出し合ってね共通の貨幣作ろうって言うんです。でそれまでそういう発想の世界的にないですからね。ユーロが統一した貨幣を作り出しましたけどね、アン・ジュンがそう言うんです。だから経済的にもそこではお互いにこの交流できるものをねから考えてるわけです。
His plan for peace was for the three independent Korea, China, and Japan to hold peace conference and construct East Asian community politically and economically. It was clearly different from the thoughts of Ito Hirobumi, who dreamed of Japan to lead in power. Ahn was definitely ahead of his time.
当时包括日本、包括中国、包括韩国的思想家们，或者是以日本为盟主，或者是以中国为盟主，要形成一个同盟。但是唯一安中根是这三个国家应该是平等的前提下进行政治、军事、文化的一个共同体。
やっぱりそういうことに対しては日本の関係はものすごい驚きを持ったと思います。そういうことからアン・ジュングンという人の持っている思想性、単なる軍人ではない。彼ははっきりとした東洋平和の理想と、それからそこに向けた戦略と具体的な方針ですね、戦術、こういうものをちゃんと持って行動している人だということが日本人の中にも徐々に知られるようになっていった。
Ahn Jung-geun decided not to beg to the Japan for his life. However, he wanted to finish his book.
그때 안중근 이사님이 이제 그 고등법원 원장하고 이제 그 담화가 있어요. 자기는 이제 그 상소를 포기하겠으니까 이때 자기는 이제 자서전과 그 동양평론을 쓰겠다. 이걸 다 쓴 다음에 교수명을 하는 게 어떻는가.
However, he wasn't granted his wish. Ahn wanted to face his death with honor and recollect his thoughts, but his book, On Peace in East Asia, was left unfinished. Kurihara Miyagi Prefecture of Japan. There is a historic Dairinji temple. On the first Sunday of September every year, the head monk holds a memorial service for Ahn Jung-geun. It may be hard to believe that there is a temple in Japan remembering Ahn, the killer of Ito Hirobumi, the father of Japan's modernization. But they have been doing so for nearly 30 years. People who have gathered here deeply regret Japan's imperialism. They wanted to recognize their wrongdoings and are praising Ahn Jung-geun for his righteous death.
東洋平和を掲げて取り組んでいるその姿にすごいなと思っておりますし、また人を非常に大事にして くれる方でありますし、それから人を導いてくれる、そういうすごい包容力のある感じでありますので、素晴らしい方だなと思っております。
So how did they find out about Ahn Jung-geun and are trying to carry out his ideas? The answer lies on the stone laid at the entrance of Daeirinji.
그時に捕まった安中軍さんを両陣の刑務所に護送すると、その護送する時に日本の両陣の憲兵隊12人が派遣されたんですね。その中の一人にここの出身の千葉東七憲兵という人が入ったと。
Chiba Toshichi and his wife held memorial service for Ahn every day for 15 years. Chiba cherished the writing etched on the stone, which meant that a soldier mustn't be afraid to give up life for the good of the country. It was Ahn's last work of calligraphy. Ahn Jung-geun left some 200 works of calligraphy while he was in prison. Most of the writings were of Analects, Mencius, and Confucius. Prison guards were lining up to receive his work, and Chiba Toshichi was one of them. But why?
刑務所の刑務官がね、やっぱり人柄に、こう打たれたんでしょうね。でそれは安中軍がどういう理由で伊藤を殺害したかという、やっぱりそこに日本人でも心を動かされたということじゃないでしょうかね。遺木自体は日本人の中でそういうこうなんていうか素晴らしい書だっていうね、それ自体に対する感銘もあるでしょうけど、やっぱり人柄に打たれたっていうところが一番大きいんじゃないでしょうかね。
The day before the execution, Ahn Jung-geun's younger siblings, Jung-geun and Gong-geun, came to visit him. The brothers delivered a letter from their mother. That is also the meaning Ahn Jung-geun wanted to carry. His mother had suppressed her sadness and wished for her son to rest in peace. On the fated day, it rained as if the sky was crying. Ahn Jung-geun took off the prison uniform and changed into the white hanbok, a Korean traditional cloth that his mother had made for him. Sonori Suizi, the interpreter who accompanied Ahn to the execution, made record of his last moment. I had asked for his last will, and he said,
My will came from my sincere wish to realize peace in East Asia, and I wish that the Japanese officials here would understand my cause and pray deeply for peace in East Asia.
He showed no fear when he faced his death at an early age of 31 on March 26, 1910.
bury my remains at the Harbin Park and take my body back to Korea only when the country regains its sovereignty. I will surely do whatever I can for my country, even when I am in heaven.
It has been 100 years since Ahn has passed away. His wish came true. Korea gained its independence. However, his remains was unable to return home. Ahn's family wanted to retrieve the body after the execution, but Japan never answered to the request. Japanese government secret documents stated that the remains of Ahn Jung-geun shouldn't be delivered to his family. It was worried that taking his body back home would stand against Japan's plan. The Japanese government wanted him to only be known as a terrorist. Even his corpse was considered a threat. He was the Lieutenant General of the Korea's Righteous Army, Ahn Jung-geun. Some 6 months after his death, annexation of Korea to Japan was announced on August 22, 1910. His country, the Korean Empire, was erased from the world atlas. "104 years after Ahn's death, on January 19, 2014, China opened a memorial hall for Ahn Jung-geun at the Harbin Railway Station to commemorate the Korean patriot and his great work.
朝鲜族的烈士能做到这么勇敢，作为中国人呢，真是表示崇高的敬意。
A century has passed since Ahn Jung-geun suggested a plan to achieve peace. During those time, countries around the world experienced many changes and become more aware of the importance of peaceful coexistence. What about the achievements of peace in East Asia? It remains to be seen.
特に領土問題、それからずっと引き継いできた歴史認識、あるいは従軍違反問題、これを全部こうごちゃごちゃになった状態に、日本の政治家たちがしてしまった部分があります。アジアで緊張した事態になっていると、私は非常に大きな危機感を持っています。
The basic spirit of Ahn's pursuit of peace still remains valid.
21세기 동아시아 지식인들에게 그 남겨진 그 과제라고 할 수 있습니다. 그걸 과제이게 만드는데 우리 그 안중근 의사, 안중근 장군이 아주 큰 그걸 하나 던져 놓으신 거죠.
In 1909, Ahn Jung-geun shot an imperialist at the Harbin train station in China. However, the ghost of imperialism lingers on. As long as there are more Ito Hirobumi out there, the keeper of peace can never go to rest. Until the great peace can be achieved, ideas and spirit of Ahn Jung-geun will live forever.